everyone's version of romance also looks different. Like for someone, it could be like the hottest thing ever to like just pay the bills every month. Like even if it's not all your, like just like taking care of it, like splitting financially, but your partner pays all the bills. Like, ooh, that's hot. And for somebody else, it could be something completely different, you know? So like romance is up to in the eye of the beholder. So Bridal Babes, before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to give you a quick wedding tip of the week provided by A. Cherie Couture Alterations and Custom Wedding Dresses. So, the wedding tip of the week is, before setting up a design consultation with us to design your own unique wedding dress, make sure you go and try on a variety of dress styles and silhouettes so you can make sure you like the dress shape on your own body. This will help to finalize all of your ideas in your mind and make it much easier to communicate the details you want in your custom dress to your dress designer. Make sure to check out A. Cherie Couture if you're looking to create and design your own custom dream dress, or if you're needing wedding dress alterations. What's up, Bridal Babes? I hope you're ready to talk weddings with me on another exciting episode of your favorite wedding podcast, Bridal Buzz. I'm your host, Kat, and today we're joined by one of our favorite co-hosts, special guest in the studio. Her name is Priscilla Rodriguez, and she is the owner, founder of Modern Wellness Counseling here in San Antonio, Texas. So I'll let her tell you a little bit about that. And then today's topic is going to be all about premarital counseling. So if you're recently engaged, if your wedding's coming up, this is something that you should be thinking about. And we're going to dive into all of the little nooks and crannies that go along with it. So Priscilla, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love coming onto this podcast and just kind of sharing just like some little, tips for everyone. So like Kat said, I'm Priscilla Rodriguez. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and own Modern Wellness Counseling. We primarily focus in on working with couples, couples who are dating, engaged, all the way to have been married for longer than I've been alive. So, and it's always great just to work with couples who are at the beginning stages. We share a lot of tips and resources through our online courses, as well as through premarital counseling, which we'll be talking a little bit more about today. But just anything from foundational tips to communication, intimacy, finances, how to set boundaries with family. So much great information on over with us. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, I feel like premarital, just like at that beginning, it's such an important time to establish all of those really important, foundational skills, like you're saying, of just being on the same page and being set up for success for potentially, going to see you 50 years from now too. It's like, the need for counseling doesn't stop either. And I think that we're going to talk a little bit about that today, of kind of like who should go to counseling, why you should go to counseling, what should, determine that. And I think it's not as taboo as people, think it is. You don't have to have huge dilemmas in your relationship to benefit from counseling.
Absolutely.
So we'll definitely get into that. But Bridal Babes, I'm excited. We're going to learn so much. We're going to have some cool stories, some chaotic stories today. But first, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions so that we can get to know premarital counseling on a deeper level. So first off, what is premarital counseling?
Yeah, so premarital counseling is just an opportunity for couples to come in, they take an assessment, and they really look at their individual strengths, and together, how does that help the relationship? Then we look at their individual areas of improvement and kind of how does that impact the relationship? Because the big thing with premarital counseling and really also couples counseling is, yes, we look at the relationship, but also y'all are two individual people, right? And with premarital counseling, we want both individuals to realize, okay, just because you're in this relationship and getting married doesn't mean that your own individual identity goes out the window, because that's a huge part. So it's always kind of making sure that both people are heard. The way we do that is making sure that both people understand themselves individually and then kind of look at the couple together.
Interesting.
So couples counseling is just an opportunity to kind of see, okay, how do I strengthen us, right? How do I contribute to what we're working towards, which is marriage and kind of this like long-term relationship?
Yeah. So what would you say is the difference between couples counseling or premarital counseling? Or is it the same thing, just dependent on what the couple's goal is?
Yeah, so in our practice, the biggest difference is that couples counseling, they kind of come in with the specific situation or kind of concern, whether that is intimacy, some sort of betrayal, some sort of, specific communication issues. They want to come in and address a concern. Whereas premarital counseling, they're saying, hey, you know what? This really matters to me. Maybe I've seen some divorce in like my immediate family or have had friends, and I just want to make sure that we're headed off on a kind of with a more solid foundation.
Yeah.
So they come in, it's more of like a learning opportunity and kind of just making sure that everything's kind of gets started off on the right track.
Okay.
Versus sometimes with couples counseling, they're kind of coming in after the fact, after something has already been kind of shaking that foundation.
Okay. Cool. Hope that helps anyone else out there understand the difference. And what kind of counselors offer premarital counseling?
Yeah, so we have some licensed marriage and family therapists as well as licensed professional counselors.
Okay.
So as long as they are trained, which our clinicians in our practice are trained to provide this kind of curriculum and help with working with couples, as long as there is like relationship and couples training that the clinician has.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Who should seek out premarital counseling?
I am biased, and I will say everyone should seek out a premarital counseling, but especially if it was really like if you were to ask yourself, like, okay, what examples did I have growing up of what a romantic relationship means? And if it was something that's like, okay, I know I can replicate that, and it's also realistic, right? And the reason I say that is because sometimes people say, I never saw my parents fight, ever. And it's like, well, maybe they were just really good at making sure you were asleep by the time they had these important conversations, right? So, how do you yourself manage conflict? How do you yourself manage anxiety or worry? How do you turn to someone and express that emotional vulnerability? Because that is all something that we discuss in premarital counseling. Again, just to help couples be able to turn to each other and not feel like, oh, my partner's just going to make fun of me, or they're not going to be there for me, right? Because that's kind of the hurtful piece. So I think if you're able to kind of say, hey, I already behave this way, like maybe it's, maybe you're not like the person who needs it, right? You will still benefit from it, though. Because we do kind of go over a huge series of questions. But definitely if it's been challenging for you growing up, just seeing that like solid foundation and what that can look like for you, and you're able to, or you yourself have had trouble in past relationships, I would definitely recommend. Yeah.
And what do you think would be the main benefit of doing premarital counseling as a couple for those kind of relationship foundational issues versus counseling on your own?
Yeah. I think if there's some individual concerns, whether that is past trauma, just other personal relationships that are hard to manage on your own, right? That it's pre-existing before the relationship, right, would be very beneficial. But with couples or even in premarital counseling for sure, right? Like we do practice that interaction together. I always let my couples know, like, this is going to feel awkward. This is going to feel weird. This is going to be robotic, right? And they're like, oh, okay. But it's very experiential for them to like know, like, oh, that's how you do it. Right. Versus here, read this book. Now do it. Right. Because sometimes it's still like a little weird.
So. You can have a tool up here, but if it's not being put into practice.
Right.
Okay. So what are some of the common misconceptions about premarital counseling?
I would say the biggest one is that couples may think we have to have a problem. Right? We have to have a problem to go to premarital counseling. If we go to premarital counseling, then why are we getting married? Which is like a big misconception when it comes to like, it's not necessarily that you have a problem. It's more so that you like care about it and this is important for you, right? And this is why you're choosing to together go through this process.
Yeah. When should a couple start premarital counseling?
I would recommend, anywhere from 4 to 6 months before their wedding. That way they have enough time to kind of, the wedding's still far enough to where they're not like last minute things. Oh my gosh, I have to do everything, right? Or even after their honeymoon. Just because you already got married doesn't necessarily mean, you're still in those early stages of your relationship. So maybe the wedding planning process is just like, you're like, I can't add anything else to my schedule or to my plate, and that's just too much. So I've had couples who maybe we got started before their wedding date and they found, you know what, this is just like too much for us. Like, can we finish the program afterwards? Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, again, just because you have this one day event, your relationship is still going to continue, right? So it doesn't necessarily play a huge role in that process.
Right.
Couples can get a together in Texas certificate if they are in the state of Texas to save money on their marriage license. So obviously, if you want that, do that before you get married, before you go to the courthouse. But yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know for me as someone who has definitely put it on the back burner. I was talking to my mom about it earlier today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm interested to know if it has to be pre-marriage to be premarital, because I really do envision Jackson and I like having so much more time and just like breathability in our life after our wedding.
Right.
And I feel like, yes, I want to utilize your online resources before, but I'll probably be doing premarital counseling post-marriage. And I'm so embarrassed to say it, but it just is one of those things where from the beginning I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. We're going to do this. And it just didn't happen. And now I'm like, I can't do it now. Yeah. Like, there's 5 weeks before my wedding. Right. What the heck am I supposed to do,
Yeah.
So that's definitely
reality.
Good to know.
Yeah.
There's grace. Your counselor's not going to be like, nope, you've already been married.
Yeah.
Can't take counseling. Okay, so here are some questions we got from some of the bridal babes that submitted on our Instagram story when we asked. The first one is, what are reasons to get a prenup?
Yeah, so I would definitely say for a prenup, it would be helpful if you maybe have a family-owned business, if you yourself own your own business, where you're at financially, or if you have children prior to your relationship, right, that you want to make sure that they get everything in the case something were to happen, whether, God forbid, like through death or, a divorce anything. Or something. So I think those would definitely be reasons why a prenup would be beneficial.
Yeah. I feel like just extending off of this, like, should it be a red flag if there's a prenup being proposed? How do you have a conversation about that with your partner?
I don't think it's a red flag. I think going in, it would be, your partner would understand, like, hey, these are things that you value, are a priority for you.
Yeah.
And if you're kind of sharing this part of, hey, this is important for me to feel secure that my family-owned business stays over here. And the only way for me to feel secure is to have it legally written out, or for my children to kind of have this, already set in place. You're not planning to get a divorce. You're not planning to, just because it's a prenup doesn't necessarily mean of this part of you no longer trust me. Yeah. Right. It's just, hey, like, this is stuff that's important that was already set in place before us. Yeah. And that's kind of still important in that regard. Yeah.
Protecting your own assets at the end of the day, and I think there is this kind of envision of a prenup of like, oh, like, you're just hogging all your money, or you're setting yourself up for divorce, like you're expecting the worst out of it. But I think you brought up some good points. Like, I didn't even think about coming into a marriage with children and wanting to make sure that they were taken care of and things like that, because things can get sticky. Things can get tricky if things aren't laid out ahead of time. Right. Which is exactly why we have a will. It's why we have, all these insurance plans in place. But so I think that I'm glad that question was asked, because I was like, I didn't even think about that. But that's definitely a premarital question. Right. So the next one is, my partner is nervous for premarital counseling. What do I do?
I think it would be just okay to ask, like, what part of premarital counseling are you nervous about, right? Some people say, I'm speaking to a stranger, right? Why do we have to speak to a stranger over something that is already good, right? And I think it's kind of just one of those things where it's like, you're to have to go in seeing it again as, we're just learning, right? Not, oh, we're going in and they're going to tell us all of our flaws and all the reasons why we shouldn't get married.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's not the point of premarital counseling. And I think it's okay for the partner to definitely, they can call the clinician. They can kind of just say, like, have their own questions if they want. They can definitely, that be the first thing that's addressed in the first session. Because doing something new can be a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And we totally get that.
Yeah. And I feel like I grew up going to therapy off and on, and so I'm used to that kind of environment, but not everybody is.
Right.
So there's definitely different approaches and different lifestyles, and it all impacts people's ability to just kind of do different things, for sure. But conversations, always communication.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a 3-month engagement. Is that enough time for premarital counseling?
Wow, 3-month engagement. That is
Good
super
luck.
fast. I hope it's not like a huge wedding. You can definitely like still fit it in, especially if you do like an online course that can be, you do that on your own pace. Again, it doesn't have to be done before your wedding date.
Yeah.
Some people do the online course because they still get the together and text certificate, so they can do that in one weekend. Sometimes people will see that like, oh, we're just gonna do a staycation or do our own little like couples retreat.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Interesting.
And they can get the course, and then like that's how they treat that weekend.
Yeah.
Or they can kind of do 2 sessions a week kind of thing. But then again, it's like really fast paced, so it doesn't have to be done before, you say, I do in front of people.
So what would your typical length, if someone was to do like 1 a week, would it be 6 months about, or?
It would be about 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like 2 to 3 months, because again, we understand that sometimes week to week isn't always realistic for people's schedules. So every now and then we'll have to like skip a week. And again, we just want to make sure that attending couples counseling isn't just like another stressor for the couple.
Yeah, for this bridal babe, I would probably recommend they take that post premarital.
Yeah.
The pre-post, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Just because there's going to be so many things to do in that 3 months that it's just going to be too much to cram into.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they're needing to do like 2 a week to get there.
Right, yeah.
Okay, and then last one from the bridal babes before we move on to the internet. How do you do it with no time? Help. We're busy, but I know I want to take part in this. I feel like that's a common thing just with wedding planning in general. It's like, how do you do this when you're both working full-time jobs? Maybe you're a part of associations, whatever outside of work. Like maybe you're also going to grad school at the same time. How do you recommend balancing it for couples that are in that situation?
Yeah. For my really busy couples, I do recommend their online course. Again, it's broken up. Each module is an hour, but then within that module, every video is like 3 to 5 minutes. So maybe it can be like, before dinner, you watch a 3 to 5 minute video, and then you take that time during dinner to kind of talk about it.
Okay.
Right? And you kind of like slowly break it up that way. It's also like if y'all are in 2 different locations, it's a little bit easier to do it that way as well. Because sometimes if your only time available is like 10 p.m. at night, you may not find a clinician who is available to do premarital counseling at 10 p.m. at night. So that's definitely kind of my go-to if it is really busy. Especially if you're in graduate school or if you both have full-time jobs, or sometimes if one person's in a certain type of field where they're doing like overnight shifts. So I think that can be like your first go-to. And then the second one would be, is it possible to schedule this out, 3 weeks in chunks.
Right. Yeah.
So we do sometimes do like what's called like a little like marathon sessions where it's like multiple sessions like back to back. It can be a little fatiguing, right? If you're doing like 4 hours at a time, but it's possible. But it's possible.
Okay. So I feel like something at least we've learned in the first couple of minutes here is it is really accessible. Like you don't have to have 2 hours a week for 6 months leading up to the wedding. You could have 1 hour every other week. You could have one weekend before the wedding where you just deep dive. Yeah. So it's really like you can build your own path in your premarital counseling depending on your time, your financial, I don't know, whatever. I feel like no matter what, it's very financially accessible.
Yeah.
But there's just, if you're living long distance, if you, like you said, if you have somebody that works night shifts at the hospital or, you know, whatever, there's an option for you in the premarital counseling world. Right. So thank you, Priscilla.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I didn't say anything about your belly yet, but I just am like, Bridal Babes, for those of you who have been with us, listening to Couples Corners, listening to the podcast, watching, you might notice a little bit of difference in Priscilla's just shape right now. And I don't know if you want to tell them, but yeah.
So my husband and I are expecting. We are super thrilled. This is our first pregnancy and most likely our last because we're also pregnant with twins. And it's like crazy, but
oh my gosh.
So we're super, super excited. We just wanted 2 kids. That was kind of like in our family planning like thought process when we were like, okay, maybe it's time to get started. And then it was like, oh, they're
dream come true.
I was like, oh, okay.
I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you.
And I can't wait. I mean, you're amazing and you're going to be such a great mom. Those kids are so lucky to have you. And I don't know your husband, but I'm sure he's great too. So. Okay, so now that we've covered the premarital counseling rapid fire, let's move on to wedded stories. So, Bridal Babes, if you've been listening to the episodes in the new studio, you've definitely heard a lot from the subreddit, just the wedding subreddit, the wedding subreddit. But since we have our relationship expert in the house today, I thought, why not dive into the subreddit called Relationship Advice, because I'm not qualified to give my 2 cents. I'll probably chime in here and there, of course, because I can't help myself, but this is the expert. So listen to what she's saying. And so, with that, let's get into it. I'm going to start us off with kind of like a softball. And this is from the wedding subreddit. And it's just titled Premarital Counseling. Has anyone gone through really good premarital counseling? If it was in person, how did you find it? What were some of the most helpful questions, activities you did? If you followed a book, program, questionnaire, I'd love a recommendation. I'm in a HCOL where therapy goes for $130 an hour, so I'm hesitant to randomly choose a therapist and cross my fingers we get our money's worth, ... So what would your advice be to her or him?
Yeah, so I think a big part would be just to maybe reach out to a clinician, right, and therapist. First, like, check out their website and just see, like, who does premarital counseling. And on their website, they should kind of have, like, this is how we do premarital counseling versus here's a therapist who does anxiety, depression, trauma, premarital counseling, and, you know, parenting, and right? Like, because it's like, well, okay, like, we can't be an expert in everything. Right. So I think definitely being able to, like, on their website, they should be able to just say, like, this is one of our main services. Yeah. Something that we do, we use a curriculum that is from when I was in grad school called Elevate. And that program I really enjoy that one because it talks about the individual first. That's how we kind of get started. Then we talk about the couple, then we talk about the couple and the family, and then just community, right? So again, your relationship doesn't just live on its own in your home, right? It's going to impact your work, and it's going to impact so many different pieces. So that's how we kind of talk about that. So I think definitely being able to find someone who is reliable is just to see, do they like specialize in this? Right. And if they don't, ask for a referral. I know it can be like kind of like, oh, it's very, very niche, right? Like very, very specific, but you're going to get so much more out of that experience and your, you know, financial investment, your time investment, if it is someone who does like actually enjoy that and knows what kind of curriculum to pull and activities and workbooks or worksheets, versus it just being like, so tell me why you're here. Yeah. And it's like, I'm here for premarital counseling. So. Yeah,
I think that's a pretty good point of like, I mean, think about it in the terms of doctors you'd go to for your physical health too. Like if you know you're going for something specific, go to a specific doctor. Yeah. I mean, you can go to your general doctor, but they're probably going to end up giving you a specialization person anyways. So I feel like that's a pretty fair point of like, you're not going just to in general find out what's going wrong, like general mental health. It's a very specific
Right.
Category. So look for someone who specializes in that category. Cool. Oh, I like that. Do you have any like helpful questions that would be good to go over, or like helpful questions that you should be asking your potential counselor?
Yeah, so if you are kind of looking for counselor, you can definitely give that office a call, whether it is their like intake coordinator or the clinician themselves. Some questions you can ask are, how long have you been doing therapy? How long have you been working with couples? What type of curriculum does your practice or do you use when working with premarital couples? If you're in the state of Texas, you can ask them, do they offer Together in Texas certificate? How long does it normally take to get through premarital counseling? And then you can also ask, just like in general, what is kind of like something like you value or like your core value or something that you're like passionate about. The reason I like throw that in because it's not necessarily related to their
like accreditation.
Their credentials and anything, but you're also talking about things that are intimate.
Yeah.
So you also want to make sure that you like the person.
You want to vibe with your counselor for sure.
Yeah. Check them out on social media. Like, do you like their voice? Like just like little things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everybody has their own preferences. It's so true. Okay. So this one is from the Relationship Advice subreddit. My 28 male boyfriend suddenly wants premarital counseling before he proposes to me, 23 female. We have been together for 2 years. My proposal isn't really a secret, and I know it's happening next month. Boyfriend randomly woke me up yesterday at 12 a.m. to demand we go to premarital counseling. Was really caught off guard. We haven't had any huge arguments in the last few months. I don't mind going, but he hasn't really said why he wants to go. He won't ask me to marry him if I don't go. He already goes to a therapist on his own and recently saw her. All he said was it's his fault for not putting his foot down and letting me walk all over him. Said we needed more boundaries. This is new to me, and the first that I'm hearing he feels this way. He offers to help me with a lot of things, chores, making my plate for dinner, gassing up my car, and I never turn down the help. I do ask for simple things like this from him, but I didn't know it was annoying him that bad. I do much of the same for him without him asking, because he shouldn't have to ask. If I know something needs to be done, I just do it. This isn't a one-sided relationship. We both work and contribute equally to our finances and home. I asked if we go through with the proposal and make an appointment the week after for therapy. He said no. I'm kind of at a loss. I've been extremely anxious at work for the last 48 hours. He's been sleeping on the couch. Will barely say 2 words to me. This happened out of nowhere, and I really don't know what to do or say. I wouldn't be so freaked out if he just told me what the issue is, but he is being extremely vague. He didn't cheat, which is what I thought this was about. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm crazy. He gets in these moods where he's impulsive and flip-flops in his decisions. This feels like another one of those times, but worse.
Yeah, really scary for it to just be like, we need to do this or else.
Out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's this part, like, she mentioned this part of he's already going to see his own therapist. Yes. He's already, this is something that came up. Boundaries were kind of discussed. So something is happening on his end that he's wanting to make sure, I don't want this to continue down the road. Right. But it sounds like he's having a really hard time being able to communicate what that is.
Right.
Beforehand.
Yeah.
And it may be that premarital counseling, like getting in front of someone else, can help him just feel comfortable in knowing how to communicate that.
Right.
Which can help in the future, even for her own anxiety of like, okay, we have practiced how to do this. When he is nervous, when he is anxious, all of a sudden there's this quick reaction. She responds with anxiety. Oh my gosh, what's going on? So many questions, right? All of that can be addressed in a counseling session.
Yeah.
Right. So that way, this may not be the first or the only time that one of them will wake up one day and say like, we need to fix this. Right.
Yeah.
So it could also be like a good opportunity to just figure out, okay, moving forward, how can they just address situations like this differently to where both people feel, okay, I can turn to you, I can openly talk to you, you heard me out. Yeah. Okay, I don't we don't have to sleep on the couch, sleep in separate
Yeah.
rooms all of a sudden. So yeah, I think it would be beneficial just to address that communication piece.
Yeah.
And whenever something is coming up, like how to kind of address that moving forward.
Yeah, the sleeping on the couch and like the lack of communication makes me really sad for our OP here, just because that's something that I can't do. I cannot go to bed in an argument with Jackson. When we were really early on in our relationship, there were times where it'd be like, sleep in separate rooms, blah, blah, blah. But then like 2 hours into it, like we make up. You know, it's like I can't fall asleep when I'm in that state of tension.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine how she's feeling with this idea of just like not knowing what's going on. You know, it's like I call it just like being in a state of limbo. Like, where are we? You know, I thought we were going to get engaged next month, and now you're saying like you're not going to, like, you have a hard stance on what has to happen now in order to get a proposal, which I also am like, I don't think that's healthy. Like, I think there should be more of a discussion around that, especially if you guys are looking to be a partnership. Like, obviously, like, if you want premarital counseling, that's something that should happen. I don't, and if your partner doesn't want to do that, then that's a conversation that needs to happen. But I don't know. I feel like maybe he is the kind of person that does, like you're saying, need that third party present to actually be able to feel safe opening up. And I wonder what kind of person OP is, how conflicts have been handled in the past. Like, if he's gotten to this point where he doesn't actually feel safe telling her when they're at home alone, and maybe she doesn't realize the kind of emotions that she's bringing up in him when she has those reactions. So I don't know.
A lot of withdrawal sounds like on his end, right? This avoidance. Which isn't helpful or healthy for anyone.
No. And I hope they get it figured out. Let's see what some of these top comments are. So our top comment is a quote from what OP said, and it's the part where she goes, "I asked if we could go through with the proposal and make an appointment the week after for therapy." And then the commenter said, "Why? I mean, aside from the blindsiding and communication issues on his part, which sure are clearly a problem, waking up at midnight instead of a normal time, this clearly matters to him, and therefore should matter to you. And if there's a looming problem in a relationship, even if you don't fully get what his problem is, it surely makes sense to deal with that first, not push for a proposal beforehand. There's honestly no way of knowing if this is him being impulsive, anxious, paranoid, or if there's some major issue that he's been suppressing and just not talking to you about. But either way, do the counseling and get it sorted. It sucks that he's refusing to elaborate, but quite possibly this is one reason he wants to go. He's unable to express issues clearly and wants the help of a mediator." And OP responds saying, "I'm going. I think I was just nervous at the thought. To me, the counseling, it seems like a bit of a downer before I get a chance to be excited about my pending engagement. I don't know. We had talked about doing it during the wedding planning period previously, but now he is rejecting the idea. I really don't mind going, but part of me also feels like I did something to him to cause this shift, and it makes me uncomfortable." And she got 4 downvotes on that comment. Y'all be nice to her. Like, even if you don't agree with her opinion here, she's going through a lot of emotions, and I hate it when people downvote like that. It's like, be nice. But it does seem like she's taking a lot of it personally, which I'm sure some of it is personal, but
it was sprung up on her, which is a little like nerve-wracking. But there's also this like idea, some like belief for her too, that counseling like is a punishment. Like, I'm like, I did something wrong,
it's gonna be a downer.
There's something off, right? I think it can be helpful, like, especially if someone is saying like, hey, this is something important, right? Like, hey, this is something I want to do, right? Could he have brought it up differently? Yeah, of course. Right? I mean, I think everyone has room for improvement, right? Which I hope that if they still continue to go to premarital counseling, that's also something that's addressed. Right? Of when there's a presenting issue, how do you let your partner in? Versus it just being kind of this like ultimatum kind of thing that pops
in the middle of the night. So I mean, there's, at least he's recognizing, I need room for growth. He's going to therapy. He recognizes there's room for growth in his relationship, and he's not running away. He's wanting to work on it. So that I appreciate for sure. Yeah, I think OP, don't be afraid of the idea of premarital counseling, meaning there's something wrong with you or something wrong in your relationship. I mean, obviously he loves you and still wants to go through with the proposal, but he just needs to feel a little bit more firm, or something needs to happen. But he's not saying I'm ending this. Yeah. So there's still hope. Yeah. Okay. Next story. Is 2 years enough time to date before getting engaged? I'm female 30 and he's male 30. I have been dating my boyfriend for 2 years now. Half of it has been long distance. He's in med school, spent some time after college chilling, doing non-degree medical work. He's male 30 and I'm female 30. He treats me well, like a long-term partner, but he says the next steps would be for us to move in together next year after he graduates, and he never brought up any marriage plans. I'm ready to move forward and honestly beginning to get a little resentful for him never bringing up marriage. He changes the subject if I talk about marriage indirectly, or says he feels attacked when I ask about his future plans directly. I think that we could get engaged and maybe get married next year before moving in together if he's that committed. Am I moving too fast, or is he just not that into me but likes the way things are now and therefore dragging his feet?
Yeah, so it's not like the long-term plan hasn't really been discussed as far as like, what do you envision this going? Like, what does marriage mean to you?
Yeah.
Is marriage something that you want in life in
Lots
general?
of big questions.
Yeah, because I think that she's coming from one side, right? Like, why haven't we taken that next step? And I mean, in some way, he's also thinking about just the next step too, right? And that's time to move in together, right? But then the part of I feel attacked if you ask me about my long-term plan is like, what is his next plan? Yeah,
it's just like a question.
Yeah, dude. Like if he's in medical school, like what? Like is he thinking of like his residency later? Like is he thinking that, you know, she doesn't care about his residency? Like what else is going on? Yeah, because I think just having like a kind of not deadline, but just like a date to look forward to, right? Like, okay, after residency, it will make more sense to get married. Yeah. Right. Versus this thing of like, I'm not going to talk about it. Because there's kind of like at least some sort of goal and kind of, hey, we're moving forward in the right, similar direction that can be helpful and help ease some of that anxiety versus it being, I'm just not going to talk about it because there's this fear if I talk about it right now, we're going to get married tomorrow, right? That's not that's not what's happening either. Yeah. She's not trying to like move in on the kill. She just wants to know where you're coming from. Right.
And I feel like if someone were asking me to move in with them, I would at least need to know where is this going? Yeah. You know, and if they were not mature enough to have the conversation or say, I'm not ready to talk about it. Can we talk about it in 6 months? Like just anything of a mature response instead of getting defensive and feeling like it's a personal attack to ask if he's ready for marriage or what his long-term plans are with life. That's and also that original question of 2 years, I don't think that's too short of a time, especially you see couples who are maybe a little older dating less, you know, like their dating time is a little bit less in time versus if it's like a 20-year-old, you may see for them it's like a little longer, right? Because just time-wise and life-wise, you may have things already kind of set in place and are kind of ready to take that next step. Oh yeah, you definitely know yourself better at 30 than you do at 20. Yeah. And I'm only 27, so I can't speak for 30-year-old me, but I also feel like I already, you know, at 25, I told my now fiance, I'm like, look, I know I'm at a place in my life where I'm ready to take this next step. And if you're not, then I don't think we're meant for each other because I love you, but I'm not going to wait forever to go into this next step. Yeah. And if I were at 30, I'd definitely feel that way, you know, like, and especially as a female, like there's, even if you don't outwardly say it, I feel like there's this subconscious inner clock ticking just hormonally that you have no control over. And yeah, if my 30-year-old boyfriend was not mature enough to have a conversation about marriage, I would move on, to be honest.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that's what she should do because I don't know enough about their relationship, but that's, sorry, bye.
Yeah.
Next. Thank you, next. Like, yeah, life's too short.
Especially when you know what you want. And definitely something that should be discussed. You know, at the beginning of a relationship, early on in the relationship, especially 2 years.
Yeah, preferably before 2 years, I think.
Right before you move in together. Maybe, yeah.
But I do feel like maybe premarital counseling, couples counseling would be helpful, especially if, you know, if she tries to bring it up on his own or on her own with him and it's not successful, it might kind of be like, look, if you can't have this conversation with a counselor, then I don't know where else to go from here, you know, but something needs to happen because obviously she's not feeling satisfied with where they're at. And if she were, it wouldn't be a problem, you know, but she's obviously looking for something more, a little bit more reassurance. And so I don't know, like, do you think premarital counseling would be helpful for them?
I think so. And I think it would even be, I would even suggest even just saying like just counseling in general. Yeah. Right.
Individual.
Or just or like
couples
counseling. Yeah. Because there's this like, there's something about marriage for him that is like, so, oh, now we're doing premarital counseling. Now we're going to have to get married. Right. Like it's not this part of like, just because you do have this conversation or do premarital counseling or like, you know, it kind of seems like very like, oh, there's too much pressure, right? Yeah. So just having that conversation of I want to have this an effective and healthy conversation that kind of moves us forward, and clearly doing that on our own is not happening. Right. So how do you feel about getting someone else to kind of step in and help us? Yeah. Right, because there's that part of I care about you, I care about us, I care about myself. And just not having answers isn't helpful. Yeah. And I feel like I'm like maybe overthinking his complex, but the fact that he gets so triggered when these kinds of conversations come up, and the fact that he took a couple years in between, I think it was, between undergrad and med school. I'm like, I feel like he's the kind of person who grew up with parents that put a lot of pressure on him to have a certain timeline, to be a certain person. And he's like in full rebellion. He's like, I'll be a doctor, but on my own timeline. Yeah. I'll get married, but on my own timeline. And he doesn't want to have to answer to anybody. And I'm just making a lot of assumptions here, but that's the kind of vibe I'm getting off of this really short paragraph that I read about him. So good luck to you guys. And this was actually this month that they posted this. Yeah. So let's see. We've got a top comment here that says, how much of the 2 years has been long distance? I don't think that 2 years is too little time to decide upon marriage at your age. However, I do think that you should live together first. I do think that a talk about life plans in a relationship should happen before you move in. How much are you able to spend with him per week, given his med school commitment? And what did he do before he decided upon med school? And OP says about half was long distance. And they updated that in the post after. I see him for about a week each month. We live in different cities still, so it's the best I can manage. We have lived together for about 1.5 months total in the past. That's interesting. So they did live together for a little bit, but they only see each other for about a week each month. What would you recommend in that situation of like being separate but being a partnership? Like how does it change once you're together, you know? Like once you're living together?
Yeah, when you're long distance, you know, only able to see each other one week out of the month. That's like not a lot to me. I'd be like,
Yeah. I mean, I would be very curious as to how did they maintain the relationship long distance and with this little, you know, physical proximity. Were there a lot of FaceTimes? Was there a lot of phone calls? Was there a lot of just like checking in on you? Kind of like these like little moments of connection, just given how busy they both were. Because I'm curious too, like how did you get to this point.
Right. Yeah.
Because there can be some really like great like golden nuggets in there as to like, okay, what are those strengths?
Yeah.
Right. Which again, something that I always like look for like in a couple, like, okay, what's working, right? Because let's build off of that.
Yes.
Versus just like, oh, this is what your the
broken.
concern is.
Yeah.
So like being able to kind of figure out like, hey, what has worked for you in the past, what was working, what is still working, and kind of like how did you get here? Because clearly something was working for them to make it this far.
Yeah, they've gotten 2 years in. She's thinking about marriage. There's obviously something about their relationship that she really wants to be in. So, yeah, I like that. Focusing on what's working and like building off of that instead of what's broken and how can we fix it. And yeah, I think, you know, people are answering her question of, is 2 years enough time? Which I think is kind of dependent on the couple at the end of the day. I know people who have gotten married after 6 months. I know people who have gotten married after 10 years. So I don't think there's a perfect answer there, but I think 2 years is more than enough time to be at a place where you should at least be able to get on the same page about where you're going.
Yeah. Even if that means your own individual goals.
So wish you guys the best of luck. I'd love to hear and know like what happens if they're able to kind of work through this. If he's able to have a conversation before they move in. I hope she doesn't move in before they talk. Okay, let's see. So this one is from the wedding subreddit. My parents just told me they don't love my fiance, and now I'm less excited to get married. I'm feeling really down and needing some perspective and support. Basically, my fiance and I have been living together for 3 years, together for 5. We met in college and are getting married in October. We had a party last weekend for everyone who can't make it to our wedding since it's in my hometown and I live in his. I had noticed my parents making really carefully vague statements in the past about their excitement and him, so I finally cornered them when we had some time alone and forced them to tell me about how they were really feeling so we could talk about it. What followed was hours of discussion and tears and how they blame him for me moving so far away, even though I have an awesome job and a great life here. They have a hard time connecting with him, even though I've seen how hard he tries, and they are often tough to get along with. And they don't feel like I am, quote, crazy in love enough to get married. We've been together for 5 years, not sure what they expect. I've been feeling really down since that discussion and am having a hard time being as excited now that I know how my parents really feel. We are a close family. I'm an only child, so their opinion means a lot to me. All of our friends are over the moon for us, so I don't think we're like fundamentally a bad couple or anything, but I'm having a hard time getting back on track when I think about our wedding now. I've made an appointment for premarital counseling so the two of us can talk to someone about our feelings and see if there are some methods we can use to essentially care less about the pressures on us. But for now, I'm feeling really blue. Has anyone else gone through this? Any advice? Am I totally overthinking things?
Yeah, that's tough, right? For her to kind of like know, like, something has been up with my parents, right? And obviously wanting that validation and kind of that reassurance from them is really important for her. And they're just kind of saying like, yeah, I don't know about this, or we don't really care too much about him, or
he took you from us, essentially is what it sounds like they're going for there too.
So there could be some concerns about like just boundaries in general. She obviously sounds like they are doing well together as a unit, right? The anxiety and concern is external when it comes to
that approval, the parents' approval.
Right. So like, what would it mean for her if they did give that approval to her? Like, what is that view of herself if they did approve? What does that mean about her marriage and kind of just like the longevity of the relationship, right? Because there's something about that it's like where is that worry coming from? She cannot change her parents' mind, right? She cannot control what her parents think. Neither can he, right? All they can do is he can be a support system. She can kind of lean on him or lean on her friends of like, hey, this sucks, right? But unfortunately, it's not like her parents are kind of also really kind of dead set as to like what how they feel, and they took hours in a conversation. I imagine there was a conversation of why.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why? Or like, what would it take for you to love him? Or what would it take, right? Which it sounds like, again, that's like that distance piece of maybe just feeling a little hurt, like you chose him over us kind of thing.
Do you think there's an element of being an only child and like the parents having a hard time maybe giving that kind of control up? Or
I would think so too. Yeah, that part of, as an only child, I'm sure they put so much effort, energy, love, attention into her, and then it'd be like, all right, bye. Right? Like that can be hurtful for them too, right there. I'm sure maybe when she went off to college, there was always like a grieving process, right? This part of like, our child is, flown away. Right, from the
and
nest.
she lives far away from them now. And like, I know for my family, my mom would be over the moon if I lived a door down from her, or, you know, or in the same city even. She would just be the happiest person. But she's also like not blaming my fiance for me living in San Antonio or New Braunfels now. Like, even though we moved here because of him, you know, nobody's like, oh, Jackson took you to San Antonio. But I wonder kind of like, you know, the couple's doing premarital counseling, but should maybe she go to family counseling with her parents, with her fiance? Like, how should that be handled?
I would kind of see like if they like, are her parents just like saying like, we're not even going to attend the wedding, we're not even going to support you in this, right? Because they definitely have seen like these extreme reasons, right? If it's, hey, we're still going to support you, we're still, you know, we're just letting you know how we feel about him, right?
Seems like they're supportive because they kind of like threw her a mini wedding in their hometown. And it doesn't say anything like my parents aren't coming to the wedding anymore, or they, you know, they're not going to pay for something because I'm marrying him. It doesn't say anything like that. I think it's more so just like
that emotional
part.
The
emotional burden.
And I think it would be first that she has that conversation with her fiance and having that support, and then I think her individually having that couple or that family, you know, just conversation, and if it is challenging for her to be vulnerable with him and for her to express herself in that way, being able to go to family counseling, like, hey, this is kind of what is going on, because they may share their own concerns if they haven't already. You know, I think sometimes parents may not like partners if, you know, whether it's not just like a good fit or this part of you're not like super in love, but, you know, there's this piece of like, how is your child, like, are they being treated well, are they being taken care of, right? Are they loved,
are they happy?
So there's, you know, other things to kind of be focusing in on versus like you're not over the moon and kind of like, you know, so in love like in the movies, like, because that's also a weird expectation to have,
especially like after being together for 5 years, like I'm sure they were like that the first couple of months, but it can only last so long, you know, like of just like that feeling of infatuation and just like there's no other person I'd rather be with. I mean, I still feel that way, but like it definitely is. It's not always that full-on passion, you know. Everyone's version of romance also looks different. Like for someone it could be like the hottest thing ever to like just pay the bills every month, like even if it's not all your, like just like taking care of it, like splitting financially, but your partner pays all the bills, like ooh, that's hot. And for somebody else it could be something completely different, you know. So like romance is up to in the eye of the beholder. So I do kind of, you know, feel like I can relate to this story in a way, though, just because I was together with Jackson for basically almost 6 years when I found out some of my family members were like not approving and didn't want to support our relationship. And it's kind of like we're already at this point where like, I don't know what you think kind of difference you can make this deep into it. Like, you know, it would have been great to hear from you 3 years ago, but we're already at a point where we've worked through the problems that you're holding on to and you just haven't seen it. So it is definitely puts you in the blues. I can relate to that a lot. And it's not like I'm sad about my wedding, but it definitely has taken a lot of joy out of moments here and there in the wedding planning experience. So, you know, it comes and goes in waves. And I hope that for OP, that it can be the same. You know, it doesn't have to be the sole focus during the rest of her wedding planning, that even if the emotions come out every now and then, that she can just move past it and remember the happy parts. And the fact that there are so many people out there that support them and are going to be 100% on their team no matter what. And I know, like, I've heard a lot of stories of parents specifically feeling some type of way before the wedding, and then it's like literally the day after the wedding and they're like, I'm so sorry, can we work on a better relationship? I wish I would have, you know, had a different attitude. You know, some people don't even go to their kids' wedding because they're so upset, and then it's like, 1 week later they're like, I'm so sorry, and I should have been a better parent. And so I don't know if it just takes the wedding happening for people to realize, like, this is real. And then for them to get over themselves. But that is a common thing I see. For sure.
Yeah,
so
that's so hard. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, personal issues or concerns happening there, right? Worries or anxieties that are the kind of them being put on to, like, if it's from a parent, like putting on to, like, their child, like adult child during this, like, really important time. And maybe even just, like, an indication of just how things have been throughout the course of that parent-child relationship. Of child now has to kind of sometimes be on the lookout of how's mom and dad feeling. Because that's exhausting. And then we know how wedding planning burnout can happen. It's really stressful. There's a lot happening, right? So that's just one less thing that doesn't need to be on that person's plate.
Yes, exactly. That's like, you know, focus on the wedding. These family problems can be dealt with after. Like, we'll get there when we get there. But you've said it before. It's like wedding planning is not an excuse to start to break down all of the family dynamics and dramas, and like a lot of it comes up, but it's not like the time to be highlighting it and really, like, ruminating. Is that the right word? I don't know why that's the word that came to my mind, but it is. So this is from the relationship advice subreddit. My boyfriend, 23 male, and me, 22 female, have been talking about marriage. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 2 years. We have had serious talks about marriage ever since we met, and we see each other getting married soon, but I don't know if I'm asking the right questions. What are some questions you would ask before marriage, and what would you expect when married? Also, what makes a guy husband material while in a relationship? I love that last part.
So she's so just kind of wanting to make sure that they, like, continue that open line of communication, which is great.
Especially at 22 to be like, you know, what questions do I need to be asking? Like, how can I prepare myself for marriage, you know?
I think some big ones would be, you know, what kind of, like, family do you want? Like, do you want to have children? That's always a big one that comes up with couples who are engaged. Is like, one person may want kids and then one person may not, right? Well, you can't really have half a kid, right?
Or even like,
you can get a dog, but I don't know.
Like, do you like adopting? Like different situations like that. Everyone has different opinions on.
Right. How would you handle if in the case infertility was an issue? You know, what would it take, like, when it comes to, or just like kind of like, what are your, like, retirement goals? Well, how do you see, like, finances? How do you manage your own finances? How is that something that we're going to do together? And when we say we're going to do it together, like, what are we going to get additional help? Financial advisor? Are we going to have, like, you know, certain policies in place, right? Like, all these, like, little things where it's like we're still having to kind of get other people and, like, experts and kind of help, or are they the kind of person who's like, no, I'm going to do it by myself, and I'm going to do it by myself, right? Because that's also something else of, like, what kind of personality does the other person have? Does that match up with, like, yours? And I'm always like, I'm not an expert in this. Let me find someone who is. I'm not here to recreate the wheel. Sometimes I'm like pulling my husband around, like, come on, trust me. I found this person. You know, we can trust them. So I think that's always, like, something too of, like, just how does that get the like momentum going? Other things can just be if were they living together already?
It doesn't say they've been living together.
Yeah.
They've been together for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And they're 23 and 22.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you handle just like chores? Like home chores? Is it like how do you discuss preferences when like especially like just living preferences?
Yeah. Some people need all the dishes cleaned at the end of the
Right.
night. Some people it's like, oh, whatever. You know, as long as it's not like crusted on there, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So intimacy, right? Just some things as far as like realistically, like how many times a week do you want to be physically intimate? What does intimacy outside of the bedroom look like for you? Because intimacy isn't just sexual intimacy, right?
It's not just in the bed.
Right. Yeah. So like having those conversations too can be really helpful in just being on the same page. And I like that question because it prompts me for one of like our online courses that we have. Like we have like this, it's literally, it's probably like closer to like 300 or 400 questions, right? That are super, super long.
Yeah. You're like, where do I start?
But they're like categorized into like, for your home, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to finances, when it comes to, you know, just like your career and like relaxing, like what does that look like for you? For some person, like I want to relax means I'm just gonna lay on the couch and veg out. For the other person's like, I'm gonna relax, I'm gonna go hike for 10 hours, right? It's like, whoa, like those are very different, right?
Yeah.
So so it's always helpful just to kind of know like where's your partner at today, and then also having to remember that just like you, your partner is going to grow, just like y'all are going to have new experiences, and what you like today isn't going to be what they like in 10 years. And you have to talk about it and you have to adjust. Right?
And you don't have to have the same answers to be compatible. That's just, I think, like being aware is the most important thing.
Yeah. Just like, okay, while you go on your 10-hour hike, I'm going to watch this 10-hour series.
Yeah, I'll be in the bathtub. I'll see you when you get home.
Like, and that's okay. Because I think sometimes there's that fear of like compatibility means like identical, and that
they have to do everything together. And sometimes I'm like wanting that from Jackson. I'm like, please do everything with me because I'm a quality time person. So I'm like, if you going to the grocery store with me is my love language, just taking that time to be with me. But he's like, oh, you can go grocery shopping alone. Like, you don't need me to. I'm like, but I do. Like, emotionally, I need you to be with me. And so, like, that's definitely something we've had to find a balance in throughout our relationship of like, I can go alone, and sometimes I do, but I definitely prefer it when he's with me. Right.
It's not a matter of not being able to do it on my own. It's that I enjoy that time.
Like I would spend every second with him if I could. That's just who I am. So, like right now, he's currently on his bachelor trip, and this is the first time I'm actually in our new home alone for days. Because he works from home. He doesn't have a car. And so if he's leaving, it's with me. Like I'm taking him somewhere. And it's not like going for boys trips over the weekend in Austin or anything like that. So it's been interesting to just like feel that like, oh, how am I feeling in myself at home right now? Like, do I feel safe. I'm okay. Like I thought I was going to feel very much like I needed to hide in my room. Like if any UPS driver came or whatever, like, but I've been okay. So, but it's just
it's an adjustment.
And there's always new experiences in your relationship where trials will come up. And you just got to handle them. I love this last question though, of like, what makes a guy husband material?
Gosh, that can be answered in so many different ways. I'll kind of come from this like perspective of it just being that you are cared for. Because I think caring can look that you yourself, your own individual needs that have been met, and that you can say like, I feel noticed.
I feel noticed. I feel cared for.
Acknowledged. I feel cared for. I feel loved. Because again, like for you, it could be quality time, right? My partner is spending time with me, and because they went out of their way and like just spent this like 2 hours with me doing, you know, just running errands together, I feel cared for, right? For someone else, it can be, I was, you know, at work all day and I came home and they had a home cooked meal, right? And I feel cared for because they like are taking care of me. For someone else, it can be that they're financially being taken care of. Maybe it's just like that they feel special on special holidays.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more so like for yourself, how do you feel at the end of the day of like, oh yeah, my partner was able to meet those needs.
Yeah.
And just recognize that for yourself, you have different needs from maybe a friend of yours, and that's okay. Or maybe what you see on TV, right? Because I think sometimes if, maybe if you didn't have a really good example growing up, like from your parents or even aunts and uncles or mentors, our next kind of option is like media.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's like, well, we obviously know that Hollywood isn't always reality. So,
and I feel like
yeah.
sometimes you see these TikTok videos of like, my wife started her period today and now I'm going to clean the whole house and bake her a cake and get her flowers and like schedule a massage. And it's like, that's nice, but that's not going to happen for most of us. Like, like you might have a very considerate guy in one area, but if you can find a guy that does all of that for you,
right.
he's definitely husband material.
But even in that situation, like they're not spending time together. So someone who values quality time,
right,
that would still be like, but where
were you all day? I was here alone in bed while you were running these errands. No, that's true. I think for me, like emotional maturity and ability to like have open communication is a must-have. That's I guess maybe one of my like I feel cared for. Feeling like you can speak openly with me and have mature conversations. Right. Because we don't have time for boys. Only men for me. And for you, if you want women, that's fine. But no girls. Like we're not here to play games anymore. We want grown adults.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This part that like, hey, I'm feeling this way. Can we have a conversation? And they can say, yeah, of course. Let me turn off the TV. Let me put the phone away. Let me look at you. Let's have a conversation. Right. And I think sometimes the busyness of life can feel like, let me just get to this. Let me just get to that. Right. But then again, it's like, oh, I don't feel prioritized. Right. Because you prioritize everything else and everyone else over just having this conversation. Right. So like, I think that sometimes that part of maturity of just recognizing like, oh, this is what my partner needs. Like, and this is also maybe for them what they need. Right. They don't want to be like that other person we talked about who felt like my partner's walking all over me and I have nowhere, can't discuss anything. So so in the comments, people are saying that they should probably wait a little bit longer too to get married just because of their age. And I'm, I don't know you, so I can't really speak to that. But, they're basically saying a lot can change in the next 2 to 3 years from the time that you're 23 to the time you're 25 or 26. And to just give that some time. And then another person kind of gave those category rundowns of finances, family, sexual compatibility, living goals, like where you want to live, what kind of lifestyle you want to be living, perspectives on divorce. That's an interesting one, but that's definitely something that needs to be talked about. And an explicit discussion on how monogamy looks for you. Yeah, that's a big one. Like how do you define cheating? I think sometimes people can be, obviously there's this intercourse part that's like, oh yeah, that's definitely cheating. Right. But then it's like, if you find out that your partner is liking some other girl's photos, like, is that cheating? Right. So I think there's like this huge portion, especially with availability, with technology, just kind of knowing, having that conversation of like, this is a boundary. This is how I feel respected. If this were to happen, I would feel disrespected and feel like some sort of betrayal happened. Because I think sometimes people can have different definitions of what that looks like. For sure.
Yeah, there's this whole concept of like emotional cheating. And there was a couple stories that I didn't bring up today that kind of talked about that. Specifically, it sounds like a lot of work dynamics. It's hard to balance like getting close at work and then not letting that relationship interfere with your relationship with your wife or your fiance. And then, I mean, there's this common idea of like a work wife, work husband. So I wonder if that is like legit like a big thing. You know, you spend 9 hours a day with somebody. If they're right next to you working all day, it's hard not to get close, but you definitely have to be establishing boundaries. Jackson has a really good friend who's a female who he works with at USAA. And at first I was like, what's going on here? You guys slack all the time. But then I started my own relationship with her, and I'm like, okay, you guys are just friends. Like, and I'm not going to be the kind of person that's like, you can't be friends with other girls, you know, because I have like lots of male friends. So I can't be one to set a hard foot on that. And now I have a great relationship with her, and we just went to her wedding. Like, you know, so I think it all comes down to personal boundaries, whatever you're comfortable with, but also like working through maybe like me being triggered in a way that I needed to go through it, but it wasn't coming from a place that I needed to like stick with. And so,
I think definitely having that open line of communication of, hey, this is like, who is this person? Right. And they're able to say, this is so and so, right? Versus like, no, I'm not going to show you my phone, right?
Yes,
then all of a sudden I'll be like, let me see your phone.
So,
so just like those little things, right? Again, the maturity part.
And if you're seeing a couple of things like that where they're acting a little bit sus, definitely, you know, questions need to be raised. But okay, I think that's great. And what's the name of the document that you're talking about, the resource on your website that has all the questions?
There's actually one that's a free download.
It's okay if you don't know it now. We'll put it in the description. We'll link it in the description, Bridal Babes. So you better go to YouTube and look at that description.
And if not, you can go to Modern Wellness Counseling, go to free resources, and there's a lot of different freebies there that are related for premarital kind of engaged couples, but also even just like, hey, these are some important things to discuss. I think it's 8 conversations to have before your wedding day. Okay. Now that I think of it.
Nice.
And there's another one that you can. There's one that's a free download. Then there's one that you can purchase. That's, I believe, like $15 or something. Like, it's really, really affordable. That just goes a little bit more in depth.
Okay.
And then there's the one that I mentioned that is like over so many hundreds of questions. That one's in our bigger diamond package.
Okay.
So the reason we kind of did that is so that way you can utilize all the communication skills that you learned and be able to apply that to maybe some more sensitive topics if needed. But yeah, it's just a matter of like how deep do you want that conversation to go?
Perfect. And thank you for having those resources available.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, I think that's our last story. That's all we have time for today, Priscilla. I learned a lot today. Thank you so much, Priscilla. I am definitely going to be a post-marriage premarital counseling consumer. Just since I'm like 5 weeks out. It's craziness right now, but I really do appreciate you taking the time and your twins. I can't wait to see them. You know, we'll probably have you in the episode one more time before you have them, but I'm just so excited.
Thanks for having me. And I love like being able to share, you know, just like these resources and tips and, you know, especially when it comes to long-term relationships. I think that it can be a little bit daunting for some people, and then other people are just like, this is what I want and I know it, right? So I think just asking the questions, asking Kat on like Instagram or in any way, just like let us know how we can help. And I just love being able to kind of be that resource for everyone. We're so appreciative of you. And Bridal Babes, if you have questions for Priscilla, send it to us, send it to her at Modern Wellness Counseling on Instagram and TikTok. So she is ready to be your resource for all things relationship assistance, wedding, marriage, not wedding. I'm not showing a wedding planner, but marriage, foundational soft skills. She's got you covered on. I got you. Yes. So, and your website also, right? modernwellnesscounseling.com. So find her online. And don't forget, the buzz doesn't have to stop here. We are also everywhere online. You can find us, like I said, on Instagram. DM me if you have any questions, wedding related, premarital related, about me. I'm an open book. One would love to hear from you and just, you know, want to meet you where your needs are in your wedding planning journey. So we love ya.
We appreciate you. And we'll see you next time. So bye, Bridal Babes.